For those of you who were downstairs with our children, earlier in the service I talked about our health, our congregational vitality. And I said that we are fairly unique in being as healthy as we are, and that we need to take advantage of that health. And to not take advantage of it would be to squander the abundance of riches that our congregation enjoys. And so now, what I want to talk to you about is the future. And I want to offer you up my vision of a future for UUCDC. Now, the joy of being a Unitarian Universalist is that my vision doesn't have to match your vision. One of the jokes of Unitarian Universalism is that we don't have the 10 commandments, we have the 10 suggestions. And so this is a suggestion of one possible future for our congregation. Given the environment of widespread church closings and the declared death of organized religion, it would be easy to say, let's just survive. Let's just make sure we keep this project, this institution going. Many congregations are in survival mode, trying to stem the tide of membership loss and budgetary shortfalls, and just make it through another year. But, as I said before, that's not us. That's not us. We are not without our challenges, but we are in the enviable position of setting our sights higher. For the past 2 years, our board has been working to come up with a new vision statement for our congregation, and they just announced it in this month's Focus. If you haven't seen it, it says, "We act boldly every day to nurture spirits, enrich lives, and strive for justice." We act boldly every day to nurture spirits, enrich lives, and strive for justice. It's got a nice ring to it, I think. What I like best about the statement is that word boldly. Boldly. That's a word of power, a word of inspiration, maybe a word of aspiration as well. So what would acting boldly look like in this church's future? The place where I'll start is with our physical plant. Right now, I would say we are just getting by with our building. And it's my perception that our current building is holding us back from being everything that we could be. While it was vital to renovate the basement space 3 years ago, as we did, to create the chapel for our children and additional classrooms and meeting rooms, we need to acknowledge that the old part of the building isn't right for our current and our future needs. While I know that there are many here with strong emotional attachments to Fellowship Hall, and that many here have invested their sweat and hard-earned money into building it, it simply isn't serving us well anymore. We need a structure that's larger, more user-friendly, that has more flexible space that will help us to live out our values. We need a community space that can accommodate a gathering of the entire congregation. We need a commercial kitchen to prepare community meals. We need classroom and meeting spaces that are air-conditioned and wired for technology. Given our location outside of a town center in suburbia here and without access by public transportation, I think it's important that we need to acknowledge that our building, if we're to stay in this place, isn't a place where we can directly serve the underserved in our community. They simply can't get here. It doesn't make sense for us to have a food bank or a soup kitchen because people can't get here unless they have a car. And those people who need those services generally need public transportation and access. So that means that our building needs to serve a different purpose. And I see a twofold role for an expanded physical plant. First, we can be a place from which services can flow. By that I mean that if properly equipped, our church can be a staging or preparation site for services that are delivered elsewhere. We do that now with the Hunger Task Force, which is the beneficiary of our Share the Plate, which is coming up later. But we do that with the Hunger Task Force, preparing a meal once a month for the 69th Street shelter. But as many of the volunteers who've worked in that will tell you, the tiny kitchen in the day school is completely inadequate for that purpose, and much of our food prep is done by volunteers in their own homes. With a commercial-grade kitchen, we could expand the services we offer off-site. For example, we could become the food prep and staging site for the Delaware County Meals on Wheels. I'm sure there are other organizations that could benefit as well. And then I got to thinking, what else could we use an expanded and more flexible building for? And I think that what we could do is we could serve as a meeting place for organizations and community groups that work to support values that are similar to our own. Right now, on any given evening, if you stop by here, yes, there are committee meetings going on, and there's a meditation, or there's yoga, and that kind of thing, but you will as likely see a meeting of the PFLAG, the parents of lesbian and gay teenagers, or a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, or some other outside group going on here, as you will some committee meeting. So what if UUCDC became known as the community center for nonprofit and social service organizations? What if we built a building with multiple meeting spaces with the express intention of offering those spaces, either for free or at below market rent, to organizations doing good work in the community? We could even rent daytime office space to fledgling organizations that are at that awkward stage between being too big for someone's dining room table and too small to actually renting an office. With the right facilities, UUCDC could become the incubation space for fledgling social service entrepreneurs. Think about that. And we would have space for ourselves on weekends, and if we wanted, we could expand the day school. All of this, of course, takes money. So we need to seriously set a course for a capital campaign that expands our facility, so that 10 years from now, 145 West Rose Tree Road is a thriving beehive of activity populated by those doing work that serves the needs of the people of Delaware County and beyond. That's my vision for this building. The second part of my vision involves our connection to those in our community who share our values. There is no doubt in my mind that no matter how well-intentioned we are, we, as a community, UUCDC, cannot create a just and peaceful world all by ourselves. And there's no doubt in my mind that doing that work is a whole lot more gratifying and sustainable if we do it in partnership with others. While we have some fledgling partnerships with organizations like Chester Eastside, what would it look like to intentionally identify and build deep and meaningful relationships with other organizations in Delaware County who share our values and are working for justice? We tried a partnership with the First Suburbs Building 1 Pennsylvania group, and that didn't pan out as we had hoped, but that's okay, because remember, one of our strengths is that we bounce back after failed experiments. How might we identify and enter into relationship with a handful of outside organizations, whether they're religious or secular, to add our voices and our energy to get to theirs to get something done? My vision for 2025 is that we be in substantial partnership with at least 3 outside groups, providing social services, advocacy and public witness, or community organizing functions to work for a better world. Then there's the question of our whiteness. Right? Our whiteness. The lack of racial diversity in our congregation. This is another area where we could just say, well, that's true for almost all Unitarian Universalist congregations. We live in a suburb, it's a pretty white area, and we could let it go at that. But that's not who we are. To my way of thinking, there is no reason that the faces that gather in this room every Sunday should not be a reflection of the rich diversity of our wider community. But as a congregation, we have not yet begun to even have the hard conversations around race and our own whiteness, our own homogeneity. There is some significant energy around the Black Lives Matter movement, and if you come to tonight's congregational meeting, you'll hear more about that and what's happening there. But I would say that work is primarily being done in the framework of outreach and social justice. It's not about us so much. There is beauty in diversity. There's challenge in diversity. There will need to be change if we make a commitment to becoming more diverse. But I firmly believe that we will be better and stronger as a congregation, and we will be better and stronger people when we embrace a wide spectrum of experience and perspectives. This is long-term challenging work, and it's my hope that by 2025 we will be well on our way to becoming a racially and culturally diverse religious community. The next part of my vision for the coming 10 years relates to another aspect of our membership. It's not about growing numbers, although perhaps growing numbers would be a natural outgrowth of the work I'm thinking about. Under Joan Karasik's leadership, we've embarked on a great plan for integrating new members into the congregation. And we've also taken a first step towards noticing who might be drifting away. In 2014, our membership increased by 12%, and this year we're showing a growth of 6% in members. Now, what's challenging about this past year is that 6% is net growth in a year when we lost 40 of our members, or 16% of our membership. Think about that. We had net 6% growth, but we lost 16% of our existing membership. Now, while some of those died or moved away in the past year, the majority of those members that we've lost have simply disappeared. And again, conventional wisdom in UU circles accepts that every congregation will see an average 10% membership loss every year. 10%. And then 16% this year is anomalous for us. But had we retained even half of those people, think how much better off we and they would be. There is something in our culture, perhaps it's in our UU DNA, that accepts this annual turnover of membership. And I'll point out that if we accept it, if we accept a 10% a year turnover, that means by 2025, this will be a completely different congregation. That's 100% turnover, right, in 10 years? But I don't accept this as a given. It doesn't have to be that way for us. While everyone has their own reasons for leaving, this loss rate says to me that there's something wrong with what we're doing, or something that we're not doing that we should be. Is it that people don't make deep, lasting connections that will sustain them over the long term? Is it that people don't feel seen and loved and cared for? Are we lacking in spiritual depth, serving only as some kind of way station on one's spiritual journey, but not a destination itself? How do we attract and retain young adults and empty nesters, our two most challenging demographics? I think that this is a project that we need to undertake, not so that we can grow into some kind of mega church, but to learn how we can better serve each other in a way that sustains us all through our entire lifetimes. The last element of my vision for 2025 may be related to this concern about membership retention. Unitarian Universalists place a premium on service and doing the work of justice making. We value action both individually and communally. And God knows the world needs help. There is no shortage of justice work to be done or wrongs to be righted. As the world becomes more divided and divisive, as politics become more partisan, as the wealth gap continues to widen, we'll face more and more pressure to spend more and more of our time doing what we can to seek equity, justice, and compassion. But I fear that sometimes we place such a premium on action that we run the risk of becoming just another nonprofit social service agency working for a better world. Our new vision statement calls on us to act boldly every day to strive for justice. But it also calls us to act just as boldly every day to nurture spirits and enrich lives. The challenge we face today, and one that I think will become even more acute in the future, is to find the balance between doing and being. We are a faith community, and it is our faith that out of our faith that we act. Our constant call to act can be wearying, and we need to acknowledge that people are in different stages of their personal and faith journeys with different needs and different levels of commitment to action. Not only must we be sensitive to those varying needs, but we also must find a way to give people the faith that sustains them, either in the justice work they're called to do or simply to get them through another day of their lives. The balance I'm speaking about is a dynamic balance. It's not static like building a tower of blocks. It's more like the balance of riding a bicycle, which requires making constant and ongoing series of adjustments, fine-tuning our motions, always responding to the pressures that are acting on us. This dynamic balance is difficult to achieve and even harder to measure. I'm not sure what success looks like here, but the challenge is to create a culture that embraces the person who walks through our doors, whether they're ready to take up a banner and march, or they're in such pain that they can hardly walk. And a culture that lets those who carry the banners to hand them off to others when they need a rest, and to have others prepared to take them up when they're handed off. That's what we need to do. So how might we act boldly to fulfill all three elements of that new vision statement? So here again are the elements of my vision for UUCDC in 2025. We have a building that supports our role as a community center that provides space for social entrepreneurs and other organizations that share our values. That we are in substantial partnership with at least 3 outside organizations providing social service, advocacy, public witness, or community organizing presence in our community. That we have made substantial and meaningful strides toward becoming a truly multiracial, multicultural community. That we solve the membership retention challenge. And that we become a faith community where we are equally committed to doing the work of justice and being the church that nurtures and cultivates a deep and meaningful spiritual life, balancing our doing and our being. Not too much to ask for 10 years. We've got 10 years. Let's get started. I offer you a brief time to reflect on these words or the questions printed in your order of service.